Today I'm showing you a really fun hybrid video setup, one that lets you shoot analog-style footage using a Sony Hi8 camcorder from the late 90s, but upscaled and captured digitally in 1080p resolution using the Atomos Ninja V. This is my full rig breakdown. I'll explain why I built it, how it works, and what you might need if you want to build something similar or adapt the idea to your own setup. This video is tailored to people who already own a Ninja V and want to use it with a vintage camera, though there are other video recording devices that can work in the same way. Okay, so let's start with the big question. Why would anyone use an old analog camcorder in the 2020s? Simple, it's all about the look. The Sony TRV-98 is a Hi8 camcorder, and it produces that unmistakable vintage home video aesthetic. Soft edges, a bit of grain, blown highlights. Perfect for nostalgia-driven projects, documentaries, or music videos where you want that authentic analog vibe. But there's a downside. Recording to tape isn't always reliable, and getting the footage off of the tape and into your editing software is a pain. That's where this rig comes in. You get the vintage look without the hassle of analog capture. So here's how it works. Most analog camcorders of this era have an AV out port. That's a 3.5mm jack that sends a composite video and, in this case, mono audio signal. I run that into a small RCA-to-HDMI converter. That converter is tucked neatly between the camcorder and the mounting bracket. The HDMI signal then goes straight into the Atomos Ninja V via a short HDMI cable, which is mounted just above the camera on a small rig handle using an articulating arm. The Ninja V captures the signal and records it in high-quality video formats, giving you a clean, digital copy of that analog feed. And to keep everything powered on the go, I'm using a special battery that powers the camcorder and has a USB output, which I use to power the HDMI converter with a short USB cable. It's a compact, self-contained system. Now, when you shoot with this rig, you get all of the quirks and charm of analog video. The lens flares, slight exposure shifts, the warmth in the image, but it's being recorded to a modern, solid-state drive in a format you can drop straight into Final Cut Pro, Adobe Premiere, or DaVinci Resolve. Because the camcorder doesn't know it's being monitored or recorded externally, it behaves exactly as it would have in 1999. And thanks to the Ninja V's screen, you get a much larger and more accurate view than the tiny built-in flip-out LCD. Plus, modern tools like exposure level monitoring, focus peaking, zebras, and on-screen audio meters, which make it way easier to dial in your shot and sound while still using vintage gear. If you want to build this exact rig, here's what you'll need. Any Hi8 camcorder with an analog AV out, a small form factor RCA-to-HDMI upscaler that produces at least a 720p signal, a 3.5mm AV out to RCA cable, the shorter the better, a short USB cable to power the converter, ideally with right-angled plugs, a camera battery that has a USB output, a short HDMI cable, an Atomos Ninja V monitor recorder, a quick-release L-bracket plate to mount everything cleanly, a small rig handle or something similar, an articulating arm or cold shoe mount for the Ninja V. Optional extras include Velcro straps or cable ties to keep things neat and prevent cable strain. It's also a good idea to keep a tripod handy. If not a full-sized one, then even a small, tabletop tripod like the Neewer branded one I use. The rig doesn't sit flat on its own, so having something to stabilize it makes setup and shooting much easier. Depending on your camera model, you may need to tweak a couple of settings to prevent it from shutting off. Some camcorders have an auto power off feature that stops output after a few minutes of inactivity. If yours does, disable it so the camera stays on while recording to the Ninja V. My model doesn't have this. It stays on indefinitely as long as there is no tape inserted. However, it does have a demo mode that kicks in after a few idle minutes, so I make sure to turn that off. Your camera may differ, so check the menu settings before shooting. While we're in the camera's menu, it's worth noting that this particular model offers two 16:9 recording modes. The cinema mode simply letterboxes the standard 4:3 image to give it a more cinematic look, while the 16:9 full mode crops the camera's sensor to a 16:9 aspect ratio, producing a true widescreen image, useful if you want that format for your Ninja V footage. Your camera may or may not have a similar feature. It's a handy option today, since most people watch video in a 16:9 format. But if you're going for an authentic vintage look, you'll probably want to stick with the original 4:3 ratio. It's totally up to you. Once everything is set up, all you need to do to start recording is tap the record icon on the Ninja V's touchscreen. A quick side note. While making this video, I picked up another RCA-to-HDMI converter, the SoundBeast AV-to-HDMI 2.0. It delivers a slightly cleaner, more saturated image with fewer interlacing artifacts in certain situations. Here's a quick comparison so you can see the difference. The unit is a bit larger than the generic converter, but it still fits nicely on my rig. So that's the setup. Analog charm with digital convenience. It's a perfect middle ground for filmmakers, content creators, or nostalgia fans who want to bring an authentic vintage look to their projects without sacrificing workflow. I love the character this camera gives, and with this rig, it's ready for anything. Drop a comment below if you've got questions or if you've built a similar rig. I'd love to hear how others are keeping analog alive in this digital age. Thanks for watching, and happy shooting!